Welcome to episode 381 of the show. Before we get down to business, apologies because today is one of those out and about episodes. I'm currently on the fuel queues because after the Salah holidays, we've been blessed with fuel queues, if we can put it that way. And so we're back to now having kilometer-long fuel queues in Abuja at least. After speaking to some of my folks in Lagos and in Makudi in Benue State, it looks like the madness hasn't started in those parts of town, or rather in those parts of the country yet. But for now, that's where we are in Abuja. So I'm currently on the fuel queue, and just like with the last 2 or 3 fuel queue recordings, there are times when I might have to take a break because I'm going to do some James Bond driving to make sure that nobody cuts ahead of me in front of the queue. And of course, there are going to be sounds of the cars, moving around in the background and stuff like that. Although this time I have the windows up, so hopefully that'll cut down from the outside distractions. All right, so now let's get straight to business. Today I'd like to talk about falling on the sword. It's a useful business skill that a lot of us haven't heard of and don't know how to use it to continue business communications when we have slacked off on something. And that is something that a lot of us do through no fault of ours. Okay, well, maybe it's a fault of ours because some of us keep business calendars and diaries and stuff like that, but we fail to use them in a consistent manner. So you have your diary and you use it Monday to Friday, but then Saturday morning you sleep in, and then Sunday, you go to church, you come back, and then you and the kids have a birthday party to attend and stuff like that, and then you've ignored your diary basically from Friday to Sunday, and then Monday morning you wake up and like, oh my God, I forgot to send this proposal. I forgot to send this. I forgot to send that. So it happens. Now the problem is that for some of us, falling on the sword can turn into not just being something of a matter of days, but sometimes it ends up being something of a matter of weeks. Now, how did I remember this? How did this come up? And what is the concept of falling on the sword? I'll try and answer them in short order. So the reason why I remember this is because I was precisely in one of those situations where I met someone at a social gathering. It was a birthday party for a mutual friend. The fellow is in the tech business, and he's currently, at the time, he was putting together pitch decks and business proposals and things of that nature. And I figured that I might be able to help him, so we entered into conversations. He sent me some material, and I was supposed to get back to him, and I fell behind. And yes, it sounds sacrilegious, but actually it is the truth that some of us should be, what's that expression? Teacher, heal thyself. Some of us should be takers of our own medicine, and we shouldn't be found wanting when it comes to these sorts of things. But I've heard from other sales professionals and people more established than I am in the field, the Grant Cardones of the world. And I haven't heard Brian Tracy admit to that, but I've heard Grant Cardone and a couple of other people admit to it that yes, they do fall behind on some stuff. And I guess it's just the fundamental part of human nature that there are times when you're going to let the ball drop on a number of things. And so yesterday being Sunday, there was another birthday party, and I knew for sure that this chap was going to be there, and I kind of had 2 choices. Number one, I wanted the kids to go for the party primarily because it was a 3-year-old party, and then my kids are not that much older, and I knew that there were going to be bouncy castles and stuff like that, and sometimes I'm not the most fun person to be around because I play with the kids, but I think by the time we've done an hour, I think I'm maxed out. I can't do any more. So I wanted them to go have fun, be with the bouncy castle, stuff like that. But then I knew that I was definitely going to run into this fellow at the event. So I thought about my possible options. I figured maybe just pull things out, rush through the document, send it to him, and then try and save face. But it just occurred to me that will be ludicrous. That's really silly. Now, the more honest and the more thoughtful thing to do was take the kids for the party anyway. But then when I run into the chap, I just admit and fall on the sword. Now, what does falling on the sword mean? It's used as a metaphor in certain business contexts, in certain American business contexts, and refers back to the ancient Japanese practice of what's it called? I can't remember what it's called in Japanese, but I think in English people have called it ritual suicide or something like that. As basically, so as a general or a military leader, you take ultimate responsibility for the failure of a campaign, and that involved you slashing your guts out. Yes, now that sounds like that's really, really gruesome, but I'm not asking you to do anything gruesome, or people who talk about falling on the sword in the business context are not asking for that kind of gruesomeness or violence. Basically, what they're just saying is you ought to take extreme responsibility for what it is that has happened, and then, with that out of the way, you can now move the conversation forward, because it takes some of the awkwardness out of the whole thing. Because if you come in being half apologetic and half excuses and half other things, sometimes it makes you come across as unserious, and maybe sometimes it also kind of moves the blame to the other party as well, because now the other party has to now try and justify why they didn't get in touch and why they dropped the ball on their own end, and then things like that. So you just come in, take ultimate responsibility for it, and then see how you can move the conversation forward. Of course, you ask questions to be sure that the train has not passed, because sometimes when you sleep on a business opportunity for 3 days, 1 day, 3 months, or however long that you slept on it, sometimes the train has moved on. So the person may have asked you a proposal for on Friday, and you forgot until Monday. And sometimes you call back on Monday and the train has passed. They have moved on, they have gone on with somebody else. So the bride said, send me some figures on Friday. You forgot, you call up Monday, and she's like, oh, my auntie has this wedding photographer, and yeah, we've gotten somebody else. So sometimes the train has moved on. So that's what falling on the sword is basically. So you call up the other person and you say, like I did in this case when I ran into him face to face. Well, I didn't run into him. I was actually searching him out because I knew he was going to be there, and I didn't want it to seem like I was avoiding him. So I walked up to him and I apologized. I'm really, really sorry. I remember that the last time that we spoke, this is what we agreed to. This is what I said I was going to do. I'm really, really sorry. I accept total responsibility. It was my fault for not getting back to you. But however, is that something that you sorted out? And it's like, oh no, that he still even had to send out a couple of pitch decks afterwards. So that's something that is not totally sorted yet. And I promised him that no problem, I was definitely going to get back to him. The next professional thing to have done actually would have been to give a time frame to say, I will get back to you by so and so. But the thing is, I hadn't looked at the calendar for the coming week and stuff like that to see what I have on the table. So I didn't give a promise of when I was going to do that, but I have scheduled it on the calendar. One of the activities, one of the line of activities that I have to do this week or next. So that was it. Walked up to him, took full responsibility, totally sorry. I remember the state. This was what I should have done. This was my responsibility towards you. I didn't do that. Are things still the same or not? Sorry, excuse me. The queue is moving. And it looks like my neighbor has fallen asleep behind the wheel. I really hate it when these things happen. Okay, so yeah, the queue is back moving again. So where was I? Let's see if I can remember my train of thought. Yes, so I admitted where it was that I went wrong, tried to find out if the train had still moved on, and so we're back in play and we're going to continue with that initiative. Anyway, the fellow, being a gracious dude, also admitted that yes, he has dropped the ball on something because he took him about 3 weeks to get back to a proposal. So yes, these things do happen. Not to say that we should beat our chests proudly and admit that we have been sloppy in the past when it comes to these sorts of things, but just to say that these things do happen. But as a business person, we should make sure that we limit these occurrences, because these are ways that we lose money. The bride says, get back to me on Friday. You forget, you get back to her on Monday or Tuesday, and then they've already made a decision on the wedding planner or a photographer. So these things do happen. Or the person says, send me a pitch deck January 1st. You forget, and then you call them up February 14th to say, hey, what's up? Can I still send the deck? And they say, oh, no, another investment opportunity came by, and so I decided to put my money elsewhere. So these things do happen, and that's one way that we lose money over the long term. So you're juggling 30 balls in a year, you drop 10 of them. it doesn't seem like much, especially since you don't know the consequences, because you're not God, you're not omniscient. So there's no way that you will know that those 10 opportunities that you dropped could have brought in X amount of naira or dollars or whatever currency that you're transacting in. But there is a financial cost to these sorts of things. So that's the way that we get these things back in play, is just by reaching out to that person and falling on the sword. So don't wait for that person to run into you at a business networking session or at a birthday party or at church or where else, work or wherever it is. You take the initiative. You pick up the phone and you say, "Hey, Kemi, what's up? How you doing? I'm really sorry about this thing that we discussed. I was supposed to get back to you January 15th. It's my fault. I totally fumbled it. I'm sorry about that. But however, are you guys still interested? Are things still in play?" She's going to answer. She's going to say either yes or no. If she says no, and then of course it's apologies, thanks for considering the business anyway, and let me know if any other thing comes up in future, and then you wrap it up that way. But then if she says yes, then you better be much more proactive and disciplined about things in the future. And that basically is the idea about falling on the sword. In this case, about how two young men, that's me and the other fellow, fell on the sword, and we're now trying to get things back up and running again. And that is something that you can do whenever you have initiatives that have stalled. Sometimes it's by your fault, sometimes it's by the fault of both parties, because an argument can be made that if you were supposed to be responsible for something and you dropped the ball, then the other party should have pinged you a reminder or pinged you a message, sent you an email, made a phone call to remind you and to try and move things along. So yes, that argument can be made. But remember, in traditional sales theory, we take responsibility for everything. And so even if the other party had obligations towards moving the whole thing along, but they didn't do it, we have to take ultimate responsibility for it, because as sales professionals and business people, we don't get paid according to what other people do. We get paid according to what it is that we do. So if they drop the ball, but we make sure that we do not drop the ball and we keep pursuing the play, then we will earn our profits, we'll earn our commissions, and we'll end up building sustainable businesses and practices along the way. So whether it is that you sell inverter batteries, or you're a wedding photographer or a wedding planner or a business consultant. So that's it for today. My useful tip for today: falling on the sword. Remember, falling on the sword doesn't have to be that gruesome, and this is how you can use it to put conversations back in play. So thank you very much for listening to today's podcast. If I remember correctly, I think the last time that we did one of these, I ended up spending 6 hours on the queue. So I'm hoping that this is not going to be another 6-hour queue day. I'll let you guys know at the next recording how this little adventure with the fuel queue went with me. But until then, I remain your host, Abuja-based sales consultant and event media professional, Tavishima Ayede. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next recording.